I was often in a scenario where I'd be manning the door outside in the wintertime on DNP. And it was like the difference, like just to give a illustration of how potent it really is. What's up guys, Derek, moreplatesmoredays.com. Today we're going to be talking about the DNP Bouncer Diaries, or whatever. I don't know what a good name is. But basically before I did the online like social media stuff, I was a bouncer, and at the club I was at, we would often rotate positions. You'd either be like at the door manning it outside, or you'd be inside, either in by coat check or by VIP or by the dance floor or whatever the fuck. And you'd be put into a scenario often when you're at the door where it's fucking cold outside and you are bundled up in multiple layers. You have a pea coat on top of your multiple layers. You have gloves on, a toque on, and you're just fucking freezing. So obviously, it's a less than ideal scenario when you can't really like move around a lot because you're basically just manning the door and like deciding who gets in, who doesn't get in, opening the fucking rope, checking IDs, etc. And you get pretty cold standing in one spot. So it's not like I did this in order to stay warm, but it was just interesting because at the time I was doing, a few different experiments still. This is sort of like at the tail end of my, exposure to high doses of random shit in the bodybuilding realm. But DNP was something I was using to, and I don't recommend this necessarily, but using high dose, or like I tried a reasonable dose of DNP, not necessarily high. But I was also trying low dose DNP to see if it was like, a sustainable way to like stay leaner while eating more food, as well as, not like for me, when I use higher dose DNP, I get like ridiculously hungry. Now, some people don't get this, but for me, it was almost counterproductive from a fat loss context because I would get so damn hungry, I would end up overeating. And then I was so flat and fucking deprived of energy that when I was in the gym, my workouts would suffer too. And it was just like overall like a net negative when I would use it. But I was often in a scenario where I'd be manning the door outside in the wintertime on DNP. And it was like the difference, like just to give a illustration of how potent this shit really is at increasing your body temperature, which shows how scary it can be too if you overdo it on this stuff. Like this is on like a controlled dose of this stuff. I would be standing out there in the wintertime normally with a sweater on. I would have like a dress shirt on, dress pants. Underneath the dress pants, I would have like knee-high socks, or like 2 pairs of socks with like, my dress shoes over top. But underneath, I would have my dress shirt. Then I would have like a tight sweater. And then I would have like a sweater over that. And then potentially a pea coat over top of that as well. Like multiple fucking layers bundled up, just standing there like a, Michelin man with the amount of fucking shit that's on your body. And when you're on DNP though, not depending on the dose obviously and your response and everything, as well as your carbohydrate intake, which is notable because if you're on a high carb diet when you're on DNP, you're going to crank your body weight or your body temperature even higher quite significantly. It's quite dramatic. It can be even kind of fucking freaky too. Like especially if you're an individual who has uncontrollable cravings when you use DNP because you get more hungry and then you end up binge eating on sheet food, like you're in for a rude awakening when your body overheats, dude. So anyways, standing outside, even on a controlled intake of this stuff, I don't think my dosage ever exceeded like 500 to 600 milligrams. I could be wrong on that. But again, don't do this at any dose. DNP is a highly sketchball fucking drug. And I'd go as low as like 100 to 200 on like low days, or, the times I was trying to see if it was like more sustainable with a lower dose, longer period of time, rather than more like burst dosing with higher dosages for shorter durations of time. But ultimately, I would end up standing there in the wintertime, literally in just the dress pants, just the dress shirt, and like maybe a pea coat over top. And I would be like, the other bouncers would be like, what the fuck? Like, how are you not cold? And like, we'd have these like heater things that they're like portable heaters that people would, normally put into restaurants on the patios and stuff during wintertime. And you stand by it and it like emits a fucking radius of heat. I wouldn't even need those. I just stand there like chilling in my dress pants and dress shirt and a pea coat. And sometimes I don't even know if I would wear the pea coat in hindsight. Sometimes I'd take it off from being hot. And you're just comfortable. Like you're literally a walking furnace at that point, just burning the shit out of everything you've ingested. And that sounds cool when you're saying it, but in actual reality, you get so flat, so depleted, Now, not everyone has this, but for me, you get so flat and so depleted, the workout quality goes to shit. And for me, I get so disproportionately hungry that I would end up having to abuse stimulants just to maintain a semblance of energy, to not feel like I'm dragging ass at work, and to actually get the energy to go hit the weights in some like decent work capacity without like completely wasting my time, as well as keeping my appetite at bay. Like heavy stimulant abuse essentially was like almost necessary on my end, which is fucked up, you know? That's obviously not, like you could otherwise have lost that fat in a more sustainable way without either of those things, just by a more controlled deficit with a bit more cardio perhaps. So anyways, I would stand there just looking like fucking nuts, dude. Like it was like, how insane is this guy? What kind of like, do you have some fucking like Jocko Willink willpower? Like what's going on? So I would stand there just in my dress shirt and dress pants, just warm, emitting heat like a fucking radiator. And it just was never worth it, dude. Like at the end of the day, for the dosages I've tried low dose, upwards of high dose. And for me, the ROI was never there. And it was always kind of scary when you get this shit too, because it accumulates in your system. The half-life is clearly longer than a day, or at least the last time I looked at the pharmacokinetics, it was speculated it was longer than a day, but I think it was undetermined at the time. They might have actually done a human trial pharmacokinetic study since then. I believe they actually have, but I can't recall off the top of my head what it was. But it was relatively well understood, or at least speculated, that this shit accumulated over the days. So you would end up, let's just say you took 500 milligrams one day and you're like, wow, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any difference. The next day you take 500, you're like, oh, I don't really feel a difference still, maybe a little bit. And you end up taking multiple days in a row of 500. All of a sudden you get hit like a fucking truck stick later in the week when it has accumulated, because this stuff is not, the clearance time is not so short that you notice like an acute reaction. It builds up in your system over time until you reach steady state. And then all of a sudden you're overheating like crazy. If you have a super high carb diet or you're cheating on the diet, like God help you, you know, it's going to be an uncomfortable few days. And this is something that I would see some people do in the summertime too. And I'm like, you're fucking risking it, dude. Like it's very easy to get dehydrated on this stuff. It's very easy to overheat on this stuff if you're not careful, especially if you're not using a good source. Like accurate dosing of this stuff is so fucking critical. It's scary. Like what if you get underdosed or overdosed stuff and you end up overdoing it significantly, even in a scenario where individuals, you know, already didn't understand the pharmacokinetic profile and would redose more than they needed. You can end up in danger territory very, very easily. And I've actually, you know, heard of quite a few scenarios where individuals did end up in danger territory. Personal friends as well, acquaintances, people that, you know, otherwise survived fortunately, but were put in scenarios where they had to like sit in fucking ice baths, have like a fan blowing on them all day to like avoid overheating. Like that's crazy, dude. Like there's no antidote necessarily to it. Like once it's in your system, you're just sitting there overheating until it works its way out of your system and you're just at the mercy of this fucked up drug. So anyways, that's essentially my bouncer tales on DNP. I was standing there feeling depleted as fuck, hungry as fuck, and the workout sucked ass. Now, some people have better experiences, like Tony Huge thinks DNP is like the best drug ever. And there may be some like to be honest, it's actually looked at in certain capacities, in certain contexts that are very promising. They're creating different analogs that hopefully are going to be more safe. But uncoupling drugs are potentially going to be useful in a anti-cancer proliferative aspect. There's like some applications that even David Sinclair, the anti-aging like expert from Harvard, has talked about in his book as well as in podcasts and whatnot. And it's a very, very interesting like class of medications, but ultimately DNP for a like bodybuilder or somebody who like highly values their work output in the gym and being able to adhere to like a hard training schedule and getting like good fucking quality work in the gym to retain your tissue while you're in a deficit. It's pretty hard to do on a decent dose of DNP, at least, you know, if you're a, I don't know, potent responder where you get accurately dosed shit. It's I don't know, the ROI on it just wasn't there for me. And, you know, when people ask my opinion on it, ultimately I tell them that I wish I could have known it before doing it. Like, unfortunately I had to try this shit to see like how I responded because I was just that curious and I had heard so many miraculous fat loss tales on it, because ultimately it is the most potent fat burner essentially ever. But it's the fucking one of the most dangerous, at least in certain contexts. You know, some people would argue clenbuterol and like heavy stimulants are more dangerous, which could be true, you know, depending on the context, of course. But ultimately the drug was just like not something I enjoyed, and it's something that I have not used since, to be honest. So anyways, that is my DNP bouncer tales. I used to sweat my ass off when I was inside. It was brutal. I would be sitting there with sweaty pits. Soaked fucking pig essentially standing there in the club. And then I would love it when I'd go outside and get the cool off and I'd just stand there in my dress shirt and dress pants while everyone else was in like 14 layers and just look like a psychopath. So good times. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, your DNP experiences. All the comments help the algorithm. They're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplacemoredates.com. Follow my Instagram at moreplacemoredates. Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My TRT clinic, all telemedicine from the comfort of your own home. Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas. I designed myself from scratch. My recommended diet model for gaining muscle and sports performance, whilst being mindful of micronutrient intake, something that commonly goes overlooked by cookie cutter influencer diets. And anything else I'm associated with. Clothing company that sponsors me, literally wearing one of their shirts right now. Really dig these tanks. Anything else I'm associated with, it is all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.